Morning. Yay, it's true. Morning, everybody. I'm good. How are you, Tiffany? How's everybody doing? I'm trying to see. Why won't this let me send it to... There we go. Hey, Emily, how are you? How are you feeling? Is little miss off to kindergarten? Oh, I'm fine, Tiffany. I mean, I'm a lightweight, so I don't have very much. I'm a lightweight. Hey, Shira. Good morning to you. Weird to say that when it's 2 p.m. Oh, yeah, you know, it does happen. Time to make coffee, though. She made it off with no tears. Yay! We love to see it. I sent off a senior, freshman, a first grader, and pre-K this morning. No tears for me or the kiddos. That is certainly something. A senior. I'm shocked that I think that's the one that would have made me cry the most. You know what I mean? Like, that's your baby. And, you know, I don't know. I think that one would have got me. There's been senior years. Senior tears. I just meant from you. I'm going to wake up in 27 minutes. Fair enough. Yeah. That makes sense. We paid at the senior parking spot and I cried on the way. That is fair. I do not blame you in the slightest, my dear. This is slime. Just kidding, it's coffee. Thank you. James and I have a senior this year too, but she lives with her mom. No tears here either. Aww. I didn't realize she was a senior. Wow. Wow. Mm-hmm. All right. Let's get this on here. I really want to steal that coffee. Yeah, you got to make some, you know? All right, so we're going to read in a few minutes. Just a reminder, I posted the first possible follow-up book yesterday, so you can go watch that expert. I have the other two to post later today. And, you know, that's the whole shebang. What's everyone drinking this morning? I need to get up and make coffee. I've got a cat on me, though. Fair enough. I had a hot cup working on an iced cup. Yeah, that's my, like how I do it. Also, Tiffany, I have a hot cup in the morning, and then usually when I have to go run errands or whatever, I take iced coffee with me in the car. Agreed. Delish. Did anyone / everyone listen to the book that I posted yesterday? Like what its little first thing was? It's pretty wild. I did not know when it was suggested to me or when I bought it that that's what it was. And I am in like shock that I had never heard that before. It's just surprising to me that I lived in that community for so long and I missed that. It's pretty defamatory, you know? Oh, I totally understand, Dulcie. I totally understand. That's normal. It's just wild. I'm shocked that I just never heard about it. Morning, Amanda. You would think that somebody at the theater would mention it, like once ever. I was there for the last, like, 4+ years of the show. No one ever said anything. I'm, like, in a weird place about it mentally, because it is such like a huge part of my life. I'm like, what if I read this and I find out everything was a lie? You know? Am I gonna be crushed? Thought I'd join today since I'm not busy. What are you reading today? Today we're reading, we're continuing Land of Stories. We're nearly done with Land of Stories. So we're just talking right now about our next book possibility. Yeah. I don't know. Anyway, let's get started on Land of Stories in the meantime, and we can talk about our next book after. Chapter 18, Sending the Swans. Mother Goose stood by the rail of the grand balcony and watched the skies as she waited for Lester and the twins to return. Emmerich and Bree were standing a little ways from her, having the most fascinating conversation with Froggy and Red. So, there are 6 kingdoms, 2 territories... Where did that voice come from? So there are 6 kingdoms, 2 territories, and 1 empire? Emmerich asked, wrapping his head around the lesson Froggy was teaching them in the fairy tale world. Precisely, Froggy said. And the leaders of the 6 kingdoms, including the Fairy Council, make up the happily ever after assembly. Red cleared her throat. Hey, Liz. They used to be 6 kingdoms, but now there are 5 kingdoms and 1 republic. Bree almost went cross-eyed from all the information. So Red used to be the queen of her own kingdom, which used to be part of the Northern Kingdom until the CRAB revolution. Was that right? She asked. The Crawl Revolution? Red corrected her. It stood for Citizens' Riot Against Wolf Liberty. The evil queen was in the Northern Kingdom at the time, and she did nothing to stop the wolves from terrorizing the farmers in the villages. So we revolted, and I got my own kingdom, which you just lost in the election for queen, Bree pieced together. But now the kingdom is a republic because the new queen changed the government? Can she do that? Evidently, Red said and pursed her lips at the thought of it. Hey. In our country, we have a Congress and a House of Representatives to keep the president from doing things like that, I guess, Bree said. Yes, well, I thought I did too, Red said with flared nostrils. I hand-selected representatives so I couldn't be blamed for my biased decisions. and the whole kingdom still turned on me. I don't know where I went wrong. But who's the queen of your country now? Emmerich asked. Little Bo Bimbo, Red replied without a hint of sarcasm. She's the ugliest, most horrendous creature to ever live in the Red Riding Hood kingdom, and she scared all the villagers into voting for her. Now that sounds like politics in our world, Bree said. I've never heard of Little Bo Bimbo, Emmerich said, and shivered at the thought of her. Well, then you're a very lucky man, Red said. A small smile appeared on her face. It was very therapeutic for her to make things up about Little Bo Peep. She only wished that she had done it during the election. Hey, look, they're back, Mother Goose said, pointing to the sky. A shadow passed over the balcony as they looked to the sky and saw Alex and Connor descending on Lester's back. They landed on the balcony and their friends eagerly approached them. Well, what'd you find out? Mother Goose asked. The army recruited the prisoners, Connor said as he hopped down from the giant goose. The soldiers were training them for combat when we flew above their camp, and there were thousands of them. Mother Goose placed a hand over her heart. Oh, dear, she said. What should we do next? I'm thinking, Alex said as she climbed down from Lester. In the meantime, Mother Goose, please see that all the fairy council mothers gather in the hall as quickly as possible. Connor, go with her and tell the other fairies about what we've seen. The first thing that we need to do is get the kings and the queens to Fairy Palace as quickly as possible so that they can join in the conversation. This isn't a fairy council matter. This is an issue for the entire Happily Ever After assembly, and we need to discuss. Mother Goose and Connor nodded and headed inside the palace. Alex raised her wand in the air and then cracked it like a whip 6 times. A series of shimmering lights flashed around the balcony, and 6 enormous swans, the size of Lester, magically appeared in front of her. Alex spun the tip of her wand above the palm of her hand, and a stack of papers appeared. She rolled the papers and put one in each swan's mouth. What are those? Froggy asked. Invitations, Alex said, and handed Froggy an extra copy to read. To the members of the royal families, an emergency has occurred, and all the members of the Happily Ever Assembly and their families must report to Fairy Palace immediately. We will provide the details of the matter upon your arrival. Thank you, Alex Bailey, Acting Fairy Godmother. I need you to take these to the kings and queens of the Corner Kingdom, the Charming Kingdom, the Northern Kingdom, the Eastern Kingdom, and the Bo Peep Republic as quickly as possible and bring their rulers back, Alex instructed the 5 swans, and then turned to the 6th. As for you, I have other acquaintances I'd like you to deliver this invitation to. She whispered further instructions into the swan's ear so that the others couldn't hear. If they don't cooperate, you have permission to persuade them however you can, she said. Bring them back by the ankles if you must. These invitations are not optional. Now go. All 6 swans bowed and then launched into the air one at a time. They flew off in opposite directions at speeds birds had never flown before. Well, now what? Red asked. Do you think the kings and queens will take your message seriously? We'll have to wait and see, Alex said, hoping with all her heart that they would. After a few hours of waiting, Red and Froggy took Bree and Emmerich inside to give Alex some time to think alone. She paced back and forth so many times that she almost left a mark on the floor. When she was studying wars in history in school, Alex had never imagined that one day she would be in one, let alone leading it. She was equipped to lead the Happily Ever Assembly. Was she equipped to lead the Happily Ever After Assembly into war against a general of an empire? She prayed her strengths of common sense and logic would be enough to make up for her lack of battle strategy. She kept thinking about the great war heroes from her world, like Franklin Roosevelt and Winston Churchill. What would they have done if they were in her shoes? What sort of plan would they have created? What would her grandmother have done if she wasn't ill? Alex heard a commotion from above and looked up to the evening sky. One by one, the swans came into view as they returned to the palace, bringing kings and queens from opposite ends of the land of stories with them. Alex sighed with relief as they all glided to her. She was so glad to see that none of them had rejected her invitation. 5 swans landed on the balcony, one after the other. The first swan carried King Chance and Queen Cinderella and their 2-year-old daughter, Princess Hope, from the Charming Kingdom. The second swan carried Queen Sleeping Beauty and King Chase from the Eastern Kingdom. The third swan carried Queen Snow White and King Chandler from the Northern Kingdom. The fourth swan carried Queen Rapunzel and her husband Sir William from the Corner Kingdom. And the 5th swan carried Little Bo Peep. Hey, Brian. All the rulers appeared befuddled by the unexpected journey. Queen Little Bo Peep had looked a tad intimidated by being among legendary rulers on this balcony, but it was the first time that she had ever been called to participate in the Happily Ever Assembly. They did? Oops. Well, it's certainly going to be a wild season on Broadway, you guys. Hey, Brian, stick around really quickly. I'm almost done with this chapter, then I want to ask you a question. Hello, Your Majesties, Alex said. Thank you all so much for coming. Alex, I'm sure we'd all like to know, what is the meaning of this? Cinderella asked. What happened to the fairy godmother, and why didn't she send for us herself? Because she's fallen ill, Alex informed them. The royals took the news exactly as the twins had. They didn't know it was possible for the fairy godmother to fall ill. It's one of the many problems that we face, I'm afraid, so if you please just quickly follow me into the hall so that you can join our discussion. She led the parade of monarchs into the fairy palace and down the stairs into the hall where Connor, Mother Goose, and the other fairies waited. They were all very surprised to see Connor there, especially Cinderella, who had witnessed the fairy godmother close the portal to the other world right in her own kingdom. It didn't take them long to understand something was seriously, seriously wrong. Froggy, Red, Bree, and Emmerich came down the stairs to see what the fuss was about. Although Bree and Emmerich had never met any of the kings and queens in person, it didn't take them long to realize who they were looking at. Snow White's pale skin and Rapunzel's long flowing hair were dead giveaways. They stopped in their tracks and sat at the top of the stairs admiring all the beautiful royals. Red's first instinct was to join them, but seeing Little Bo Peep in the group of her former peers was a painful reminder that she didn't belong anymore. She sat next to Bree and Emmerich on the stairs and glared at her nemesis from afar. Froggy rushed down the stairs to say hello to his charming brothers. Charlie, what's happened to you? Chandler asked. Why are you frog again? Chance asked, just as curious. It's a long story, Froggy told them. We'll explain everything, I promise. Alex decided to explain it before any more confusion filled the room. The fairy godmother is very sick and her magic is fading, she told everyone. Her spell on Prince Charlie has worn off and the portal to the other world has been partially reopened. An army from our world has crossed over and plans to dominate this world, but I'll let Connor tell you about that since he saw the army up close. Alex gestured for her brother to take the floor, but Mother Goose suddenly rose from her seat. No, I'll do it, she said. It's my fault they're even here after all. Alex and Connor looked at each other. They were impressed she was willing to take responsibility in front of the entire Happily Ever After assembly. Mother Goose informed the kings and queens about the Grand Armée and how it was her fault that they had traveled through the portal and into the fairy tale world. She told them how they had raided Pinocchio prison and recruited its criminals. And last, Mother Goose had the unfortunate task of telling the royals they could be at war soon. Alex sat in her chair as the monarchs were informed. She continued thinking of the horrors the future might bring and how they could best be prepared for them. So this army of 5,000 men now has hundreds of additional soldiers? Criminals that we put behind bars? Snow White asked with a hand over her mouth. That's correct, Mother Goose said. And we have a suspicion that it will inspire all the criminals on the loose in the dwarf forests and the other kingdoms to join the armée. Ugh, why did I invite people over? ADHD panic. Oh no, it's too early for people. And how many criminals in total would we say are currently unaccounted for within our kingdoms? Sleeping Beauty asked. We've estimated around 3,000 or so, Emeralda told the room. Rapunzel quickly did the math in her head. That gives the Grand Armée a total of close to 9,000, she said. That's more than all of our armies combined. Yeah, how many soldiers are in your armies? Connor asked. Well, the Northern Kingdom has an army of 2,000 men, King Chandler said. The Charming Kingdom has 1,000, Chase said. And many of the Eastern Kingdom's men perished trying to fight off the Enchantress's curse, Chase said. We only have around 1,500 soldiers left. The Corner Kingdom's army is very small as well, consisting of only 500 men, Sir William said. Little Bo Peep was the only one who hadn't responded. I don't know the exact number. I would say somewhere 828 men, Red called down from the top of the stairs. Little Bo shot her a nasty look. Yes, thank you, former Queen Red Riding Hood, she said. The twins were shocked by the low numbers. Yeah, well, unlike your world, we've never had a real reason until now for large armies, Mother Goose said. Connor added these numbers in his head. So that means with all your armies together, the Happily Ever After assembly was roughly 5,000 and a half men? That's 5,000 and a half versus a potential 9,000? The army could grow up to twice the size of our forces. Yeah, and that's still not including the armies of the Elf Empire and the Trollblin territory, Mother Goose reminded them. If General Marquis manages to convince them the way that he convinced the prisoners, then it's over. We will never win this war. Then we'll have to get to them first. Alex joined in the discussion for the first time. We'll need to do whatever it takes to make sure the elves and the Troblins are on our side. They may not have a great relationship with the Happily Ever After assembly, but I doubt they want to see the world taken over by the army any more than we do. Does anyone know how large the elf and Troblin armies are? The trolls and goblins have an army of 700, I believe, Tangerina said. And the elves have 1,000 soldiers? Well, that's good news for us, Alex said. After we convince the Troblins and the elves to join us, we'll raise our army to much better odds of survival. Plus, we have the fairies on our side. We can't forget to include them. All the fairies behind the podiums objected at once, but Xanthos was the loudest. Fairies cannot go into battle. It's against the Happily Ever After Assembly Code of Magic, he protested. Screw the code, Connor yelled. The room went silent. The code is there to ensure peace and prosperity for the fairy tale world, and soon there may not be a fairy tale world left. If we want to win this war, then we'll have to fight fire with fire. In Xanthos, no one has more fire than you, and no one can stir waves better than Skylene, and no one can sting like Tangerina. We're going to have to use every resource possible. The fairies were morally opposed to this idea with every fiber of their beings, but Connor was right. As long as they were using their magic for the greater good, they had no choice. Alex folded her hands together and looked at the floor the more she thought about what needed to be done. All right, I think I have a plan. Everyone listen closely, she said, and gained the room's undivided attention. We don't know how or where the Grand Armée will strike first, but we have to assume it could be anywhere. I want all the kings and queens to write their commanding officers and tell them to split their armies in half. Half of each army will stay in its respective kingdom so that nothing is left unguarded. The other half will go into hiding. I don't care where they go as long as they stay out of sight. They are not to come out of hiding until they get my signal. Oh, why split up the armies? Xanthos asked. That way, no kingdom is left unguarded in case it's attacked, Alex explained. And if a kingdom is attacked, its army won't be lost. Alex turned to face its fairies. I want you to be with the soldiers guarding the kingdoms, she said. Rosette, you will go to the Corner Kingdom. Skylene, Northern. Xanthos, Charming. Tangerina, Eastern. Violetta and Coral to the Bo Peep Republic. Mother Goose and Emeralda will stay in the Fairy Kingdom and look after the Fairy Godmother. Alex turned back to address the entire room for the conclusion of her plan. My brother and I will personally go to the Troblins and the Elves and plead with them to join our side. As soon as we recruit the Elves and the Troblins, I'll signal all the remaining armies and the ones at home and the ones in hiding and lead them on a strike against the Grand Armée. Everyone carefully went over this plan in their heads. It may not have been a perfect strategy, but it was the only one they had. What's going to happen to all of us? Cinderella asked. Do we go home to our kingdoms, or do we stay in the fairy palace? Neither, Connor said, and he stood by his sister. If the army finds you, they'll kill you. They have a history of killing royal families and aristocrats. To them, death is the only surrender. We have to keep you moving at all times so they never find you. I would suggest we put you all on a flying ship like the Granny, but if the Grand Armée saw that in the sky, they would freak out and definitely shoot you down. Then what can we place them on that's both secretive and continuously moving? Alex asked. Her words rang a bell. Connor knew that he had heard something recently that met his description. He just had to think. He thought back to the very beginning of this whole ordeal. When he was standing at the cemetery listening to the Brothers Grimm stories, the answer came to him. The Brothers Grimm hadn't just provided a warning. They'd also provided a plan. I've got it, Connor said. We'll put them on an enchanted path, just like the story to the secret castle. You knew, Tiffany! You knew! The path could weave through the kingdoms like a snake, never traveling in the same direction twice and never leaving a trail behind. That's brilliant, Alex said. And the only people who will be able to find it are the people who know about it. As long as the army never knows about the path, they'll never find it. Connor stepped closer to Alex and whispered something in her ear so only she could hear it. Do you think you can create that path, Alex? He didn't want to fill the room with hope if Alex wasn't capable of that enchantment. Alex took a few deep breaths. Yes, she said. I know I can. She looked up at the top of the stairs where the others sat. Red, can we use the carriages you arrived in? They were very plain and they didn't hold any symbols of royalty. Red grunted. Don't mind me. Alex eyed the official robes, crowns, and all the jewels the kings and queens wore. We should also strip you down so that you look less official. You can't wear any jewelry or be followed by any guards or do anything that would make you appear royal. But surely we can't go down this path unprotected, Snow White said. We will need some form of protection, Sleeping Beauty said, even if the path is as disguised as we are. Alex looked to the sky to think about this, and a big smile grew on her face for the first time all day. Yeah, I know the perfect people, Alex said. They were flying right above her. Everyone looked to the sky to see what Alex was smiling about. The sixth swan was finally returning to Fairy Palace, and it landed in the hall. All the monarchs and fairies were stunned to see Jack and Goldilocks climb off the swan's back. Why is that making me teary? Oh my God. Alex had secretly sent one of the swans to find her fugitive friends. You invited them? Red yelled from the top of the stairs. Yeah, I figured it couldn't help to have friends around, Alex said, but now we have the perfect assignment for them. They waved uncomfortably at the royals in the hall. Less than a year ago, the kings and queens had agreed to clear them of all their crimes as a way of thanking them for helping to defeat the Enchantress. And since then, despite the gesture, Jack and Goldilocks had already committed multiple crimes in all their kingdoms. Hey, everyone, Jack said. What's the occasion? We got your letter, Alex, Goldilocks said. We figured it had been sent to us by mistake, but the swan was very persuasive. She and Jack held up their arms and showed the bite marks they had endured trying to avoid the trip. Alex and Connor quickly told them about the Grand Armée and their plan to conquer the fairy tale world. Jack and Goldilocks knew much more than they'd expected. Word of the Grand Armée was spreading through the kingdoms. Many criminals we know already joined them, Jack said. The armée is growing by the minute. Jack, Goldilocks, I need a big favor, Alex said. We're sending the kings and queens away so the armée can never find them. I'm going to ask that you go with them and protect them just as you protected my brother and me during our quest to stop the Enchantress. Jack and Goldilocks looked at each other. It was a big favor. The kings and queens began mumbling their objections to one another. How were a couple of crooks supposed to protect them? Red whistled from the top of the stairs to get the room's attention. I know what you're thinking. Because there isn't a negative thought that I haven't had about these two myself, Red declared. But I can assure you there is no one in the world that Goldilocks can't take on with her sword or that Jack can't face with an axe on his side. We wouldn't have survived our trip around the kingdoms if they hadn't been there. We'll be protected under their care. Jack, Goldilocks, and the twins did a double take. They couldn't believe that Red was defending them to all these people. Thank you, Red, Goldilocks said. I never would have expected praise from you. Oh, I forgot to tell you, Goldie, Red said, excited. I have a new nemesis now, so you're off the hook. Red gave Goldilocks a thumbs up, and Little Bo rolled her eyes and crossed her arms. Very well, Cinderella said and held Princess Hope a little tighter than before. If you trust them, I suppose they are the best people for the job. Well, then it's been decided, Esmeralda declared. Now, we mustn't waste another minute. Let's get the kings and queens to safety. The fairies magically transformed the royals' regal wardrobes into simple common clothing. They were provided with parchment and scrolls and wrote to their commanding officers to inform them to split up the armies as Alex had instructed. All the fairies, except for Esmeralda and Mother Goose, took the letters and disappeared into the air, traveling to the kingdoms as they had been assigned. As they did this, Connor climbed to the top of the stairs to speak with Bree and Emmerich. I want you guys to go with the kings and queens on the secret path, he said. I would never forgive myself if something happened to you. You'll be safe if you're with Jack and Goldilocks. I promise. Bree and Emmerich both nodded, wide-eyed. The events the past 24 hours had caused their heads to spin so fast they couldn't think straight. They would have agreed to anything. Certainly, Emmerich said. Yeah, that sounds good, Bree said. Connor smiled and then faced red. I want you and Froggy to go as well so that Bree and Emmerich have someone they know with them, he said. And besides, Alex and I will feel better knowing all of our friends are safe. What? Red asked sharply. You want me stuck in a traveling party with that Peep woman? I'm really sorry you lost your throne, Red, Connor said. But if the Grand Armée finds you, they won't care that you used to be queen. I know you love necklaces, but I don't think wearing a guillotine would be a good look for you. Fine, Red agreed. But if we get captured, I'm volunteering Little Bo for target practice. Once all the monarchs had been disguised, everyone left the hall, following Alex outside to the front steps of the fairy palace. These carriages were lined up in front of the fairy palace with 2 horses each. King Chance, Queen Cinderella, and Princess Hope climbed into the first carriage with Queen Sleeping Beauty and King Chase. Queen Snow White and King Chandler joined Queen Rapunzel and Sir William in the second carriage. Froggy, Red, Emmerich, and Bree boarded the third carriage, and to Red's dismay, they were joined by Queen Little Bo Peep. Will someone please put me back inside a wolf's stomach? Red agonized. This is going to be a long trip, Little Bo sighed and shook her head. Bree stepped outside the carriage before the door was shut and gave Connor a massive hug. Please stay safe, she said. The gesture made Connor turn bright pink. Don't worry about me, he said. I'm used to being in danger. Connor shut the carriage door behind her with a tap for good luck. Cinderella poked her head out of the first carriage to get Connor's attention. I was just wondering if you heard from my stepmother and stepsister, she asked. Are they all right in the other world? Oh, yeah, Connor said. Last time I talked to them, Lady Iris and Rosemary had opened a diner and Petunia was working at an animal hospital. They seem really happy. Hearing this made Cinderella very happy, too. Connor was glad he could provide her with a bit of joy before she departed on the secret path. Jack and Goldilocks mounted the horses attached to the first carriage so that they could keep watch as they traveled. Emeralda bewitched the carriages to drive themselves while Alex stood in front of the first carriage ready to create her biggest enchantment yet. I laugh in the face of danger. Ha 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 ha! Roar! Sorry. It's like a tick. It just happens. I'm sorry. Okay, Alex whispered to herself. Here I go. Alex visualized the path as clearly as she could. She imagined it snaking through the kingdoms, never giving an indication of where it was headed, leaving no trace of where it had been. She touched the ground with the tip of her wand, and a shimmering gold path appeared on the ground ahead of her. It was less than a quarter-mile long and disappeared at both ends. Jack and Goldilocks held the reins of the horses, and the parade of carriages took off down the secret path. Alex joined Emeralda, Mother Goose, and her brother on the front steps, and they waved the travelers off until the golden path and the carriages snaked out of sight. Ticketmaster is the villain in all of our stories, you guys. It's the worst timeline. Emeralda placed a hand on Alex's shoulder. Your grandmother would be very proud of you. I know, Alex said softly. She just wished that she could have been there to see it. Emeralda, Mother Goose, and Connor went back inside the fairy palace. Alex was just about to turn and go with them when she saw someone she had completely forgotten about for the past few hours. Rook, Alex said. He was peeking out from behind one of Rosette's magically enlarged roses. Alex, are you coming inside? Connor asked. Yeah, I'll be there in a minute, she said, and ran into the garden to see Rook. She pulled him behind a giant patch of tulips and threw her arms around his neck. Sorry to intrude again. I just haven't seen you in a while and I was worried. Where are all those carriages for? Rook said, but his cheerful expression quickly faded when he saw the seriousness in her eyes. Alex, what's wrong? Everything, she said and fought back tears. She'd held it together very well today, but Rook was the only person she didn't feel like she had to be brave in front of. My grandmother is sick and there's an army invading and it's trying to take over this world. What? Rook said. What do you mean there's an army? Alex grabbed his shirt and pulled him closer to look directly in his eyes. You and your dad have to get as far away from here as possible, she said. You have to leave before you get hurt. I hope this isn't your way of letting me down gently, Rook said, trying to make her laugh. I'm serious, Rook, Alex said. Please, you have to go. I couldn't live with myself if anything happened to you. Promise me that you'll get out of here. All right. I promise I'll get my dad and we'll leave. Alex sighed and looked at the ground. Good, she said. I have to get back to the palace now. There are so many things we still need to plan. Rook looked at her with the saddest eyes Alex had ever seen. But when will I see you again? I don't know. I'll find you once it's all over and done with. Now please, go, so I don't have to worry about you on top of all of this. Rook nodded. He kissed her on the cheek, and then he headed home. Sitting behind the tulips, it was the first time Alex had been out of sight all day. She kneeled on the ground, closed her eyes, and just breathed. She'd put on a good show for the fairies and the royals and her brother, but after seeing Rook, all the emotion built up inside her young body suddenly surged through her. Just breathe, Alex said. Just breathe. You can handle this. You can handle this. She stayed behind the tulips until she felt the fear fade from her eyes and her brave face returned. Poor Alex. That's really sad. She's young. He's going through it. She is going through it, this poor kid. All right. I am going to go do the other 2 videos for you guys so I can post these. And then we can vote on what our next book is going to be. Oh, Brian's still here. Oh, good. Brian, so I'm thinking that this might be our next book for book club, Brian. It's about this woman, Sarah Schulman, who wrote a book in the 90s called People in Trouble. And the article at the beginning of this book, I haven't read the book yet, but the article at the beginning of this book is basically claiming that it was lifted for rent. Have you heard about this? It's basically claiming that Jonathan Larson just like stole her story and wrote Rent. Is that wild or what? It's blown my mind. I only just read the first, I posted a video reading the article at the beginning of it, so you can go listen to it. It's an article that was in New York Magazine, January 13th, 1997, written by someone else, not by the woman who wrote the book. No, Rent is not, no. I know Rent is not a novel idea, but this is claiming that it's like word for word almost stolen. Not like, we all know that it was a concept that was inspired by other works. That's not what it's saying though. It's like, the name of the book is People in Trouble by Sarah Schulman. The name of this book is Stage Struck. And I think this might be our next book club book. The article was really interesting. I posted a video reading the entire article out so that you guys could hear it. It's really interesting. So the book itself is called Stage Struck, Theater, AIDS, and the Marketing of Gay America. And essentially, well, I'll just read you guys the back of the book really quick. I read it yesterday also, just the little blurb in the back says, in Stage Struck, noted novelist and outspoken critic Sarah Schulman offers an account of her growing awareness of the startling similarities between her novel People in Trouble and the smash Broadway hit Rent. With a powerful and personal voice, Schulman's book is part gossipy narrative, part behind-the-scenes glimpse into the New York theater culture, and part polemic on how mainstream artists co-opt the work of marginal artists to give an air of diversity and authenticity to their own work. Rising above the details of her own case, Schulman boldly uses her suspicion of copyright infringement as an opportunity to initiate a larger conversation on how AIDS and the gay experience are being represented in American art and commerce. Stage Struck's message is sure to incite discussion and raise the level of debate about cultural politics in America today, in the 90s. I mean, okay, so it's not shocking to me that none of us who are in here knew about this book, because this was published in 1998 and we were children, like literal children when this happened. My shock is more that I just never heard about it when I was like literally living at the Nederlander. Like that no one even like slyly brought it up backstage or like anything. That's the weird part.
I only found out about this book because I posted that silly video the other day about the off-Broadway rent, and someone asked if I had read this book, and I was like, no, what is it? And I went and bought it immediately. Yeah. Crazy, right? I mean, like, am I touched? It's just wild. You're reading an article about it now. Yeah, I don't want to read anything about it until I finish the book because I don't want to taint my, what I know before I go into it. But it's interesting, right? Very interesting. Very interesting. And it'll be interesting to see what people were saying in the 90s about all of these topics, versus what we deal with today. Really interesting. I don't know. I do not know. Maybe, I wonder if this is not, I mean, it's a pretty short book. I don't know how long the chapters are, but I wonder if this is the type of book that we don't do on lives, and this needs to be like read in videos so that even people who don't make it to lives can the information get out there. Allegedly, friends acknowledge the inspiration. Yeah, but inspiration is one thing. It's pretty, I mean, at least the article in the beginning it's pretty inflammatory. It's not saying inspiration. It's saying direct copy. You know what I mean? Like, it's pretty egregious what they're saying. Maybe true. You know what I mean? I now, honestly, this kind of makes me want to read People in Trouble. Schulman seems more upset that Larson was a straight man who didn't die of AIDS. Okay, well, yeah. I'm not upset that he was a straight man that didn't die of AIDS. I don't wish that on anyone. I mean, what he dealt with wasn't any better or worse than, having an aneurysm. We can't compare diseases. That's crazy. You know what I mean? Like, he had a really sad end to his life. So I don't think we should go down that road. Not that you are, if that's what she's saying. But I think the marketing of gay America part of this is pretty interesting. Like, that's part of the title, That being said, it does, I guess excuse me, I don't know where that came from. It does beg the question, and this is an interesting discussion to have, that if you are a straight person who is immersed in a world of LGBTQIA people, does that not, in a small part, also become your story when something like this is happening? According to a 2019 article, it seems she didn't have a problem until she found out he didn't die of AIDS. That's insane on her part. I'm sorry. That's wild. That's a wild thing to say. That's crazy. She must, what? That's wild. You should either have a problem with copyright infringement or not. It shouldn't be based on how someone died. I don't know. That's crazy to me. Like, I've always known that Jonathan was a straight man writing about this community, but I didn't have a problem with it, mostly because I think who all has seen the like original recordings of him performing Tick Tick Boom in its like original incarnations in the basements? And he has that, that line where he's like, my friends are dying and I don't know what to do. You know what I mean? And he was earnest in that. I don't think that he was acting when he said that. He said, my friends are dying and I don't know what to do. And then, his art was what he did. So I don't take issue with him being a straight man writing about it, because in the same way that Mark is the only one in Rent not dealing with the situations at hand, Jonathan is kind of that representation. Yeah, exactly, Shira. Right, Becca? But like Jonathan, in a way, is kind of represented by Mark in that we all know that there are elements of him in all the characters, but there is something to be said for being probably in part because he wasn't dying of AIDS. You know what I mean? Like, if he had been dying of AIDS, would he have had the physical or mental capacity to write something for 10 years? Probably not, right? It's interesting. I find it fascinating. Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. This whole thing is like, I drool for stuff like this. This is absolutely drool worthy to me. I mean, I'm going to read the book either way, obviously, whether or not it's our next book, but I'm like, I don't know. Anyway, I gotta go. I got a lot of work and stuff to do, but I think we should definitely continue this discussion. Maybe we should, Becca just reclaimed her spot as number one gifter. I never asked for gifts. Don't anybody feel like they need to send gifts. That's not a thing. I don't. I was just being funny and saying that about Becca. I'm wondering, just caught the end. Have a great day. You too, Rosie. I don't know. This just feels like it needs to be a larger discussion. I don't know. I demand to be part of your TikTok team, whatever that means. You only want gifts if your mom sends them. I only don't want gifts if my mom sends them. When Secret Boyfriend was here, he was like, why doesn't she just hand you $5 if she really wants to give you something? I was like, I don't know. I demand to be a part of your TikTok team. I don't even know what that means. I get back end alerts all the time from TikTok. It's like, grow your team. If you get this many people, you'll get a bonus. And I'm like, I am not going to ask for that. And they're like, ask people to be on your team. I'm like, I'm not going to do that. But they really want me to. They really do. I get alerts every day. Send roses to your mom. You get a rose, you get a rose, you get a rose. Hey, there we go. Oh no. Oh, the battle begins. So anyway, I know that this is kind of like off the rails, but I don't know. I might post something to start the discussion about this, and maybe we can get some theater TikTokers talking about this together. It's only for this live, Sasha. Oh, I thought it was overall. That's funny. I don't know. I really think this is an interesting topic of discussion, and I would like to continue it further. So that's what I have to say about that. Love you all, and I'll see you later.